Okay, so welcome to today's webinar, which is entitled Freedom in Mind. Let's talk about mental health in a crazy world. And I'm going to be the facilitator for today. So my name's Sara Sanderson, and I work as a liberation coach, basically exploring what and who we are and how this wonderful human experience actually works, and how that really, once you understand that, your perceived limitations kind of just fall away. And for me, I've just fallen more and more in love with my humanness and, you know, my sort of imperfect perfection, as it were. So that's basically what I do. Today, though, Samantha Hurst is our guest host. So Sam works as an artist and a coach, and I'm going to let her tell you all about, whatever she feels she wants to share about herself as we get into this. So like I say, I'm playing facilitator really today, but the idea is Sam will lead us into this conversation, but it is let's talk about. So if you've got questions that you want to ask Sam, then just unmute yourself, which is in the bottom left corner. There's like a little microphone. You can unmute yourself and ask Sam a question, and she very much welcomes questions. So yeah, I think that's all. I think that's the housekeeping bit. So I'm going to mute myself as well when I'm not speaking, Sam, because I've got the two and a half year old twins that might be, you know, crazy in the background. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being here. I think I chose today's topic along with Sara because it's had such a profound impact on my mental health. So in the 4 years since I've been looking towards the principles and sharing the principles, I've seen profound implications for people's mental health through understanding who we really are, the operating system of being a human, and really just the oneness that the principles point towards. There's such a deep, profound truth within this understanding that it gets us really comfortable, as Sara was saying, with the human experience. I think for me and for a lot of people that I know, we were never quite comfortable with the human aspect of the downs and the sadness and the feelings that we can get. And I think once we see that actually all feelings are normal and on the table for being a human, there's something quite liberating in that. And for me, my background was that I probably spent around 7 years in some kind of mental distress. It started with a severe breakdown and then left me with terrible, crippling anxiety and depression. And I was a therapist at that time. I was in the natural health world and had a very successful clinic, which I had to give up. So I was very much in a world where there was many therapists that I knew that I went to help me. And I may have had temporary shifts, but nothing that really lasted, or nothing that had a deep lasting change. It was very much kind of band-aids on the problems. So what happened for me was I accidentally came across the principles, and you'll hear a lot of people saying that they kind of just stumbled across them. So I stumbled across them through an NLP practitioner that was just learning them. And he shared them with me, and I was a really slow learner. I wasn't someone that picked it up really quickly. It took me around 6 months. And after around 6 months, I remember thinking, there must be something in this. I can feel that there's some truth in it, but I don't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. So I delved a bit further rather than him just chatting to me about it at the end of our NLP sessions. And I found Michael Neill's book, The Inside Out Revolution. And this was February 2014, and I read that book, and in that time, I read it in about 12 hours, something profoundly shifted in my world. I literally went from somebody that lived to tick off the days that I'd got through, I got through another one, well done, to somebody that felt joy at being alive. And it was in that moment that it happened. I saw, my insight was seeing thought. I saw that thought was the master of my experience, and I wasn't experiencing the outside world. I wasn't experiencing my past. I wasn't experiencing a perceived negative future or my bank account or anything that had happened to me, I was literally experiencing thought. And in seeing that, the mental torment that I'd been in for 7 years just shifted. Something shifted so deeply, and I spent 3 days in a state of pure bliss. And in that time, I actually thought in that time that was it. I was going to feel like that forever, but that didn't happen. What happened was that I slowly shifted back into being human and having a human experience, but knowing that there was something that I was seeing beyond that had profound implications for my mental health and well-being. So the first year, I can't say was completely living in a world of bliss. I think I went through still some big dips of sort of mental disharmony. They were never as bad as before, but I still had some moments of depression and anxiety that felt quite severe. But I seemed to shift out of them a lot quicker. That was different in the first year. And my understanding of those 3 days that I experienced gave me something almost to hold on to, that there was something more. So I carried on exploring, and then after a year, I went to a retreat hosted by Rudy Kennard and Jenny Kennard at the time, and Dick and Bettinger. And during that retreat, I had another profound shift, and from there, it really has been no looking back. I couldn't imagine having another direction to go in, or bothering to look in any other direction, because this is so upstream. This is so at the root of who we truly are. And everything I'd done previously had been exploring the content of my thinking to try and find wellness. And what the principle showed me, that it was the context of thought that was where mental health and well-being lied. Because as soon as we see what thought is, our relationship profoundly shifts to thinking, to our thoughts, and we then take them less seriously, and we start to experience life in a completely different way. It's like a plot twist. It's like I thought life worked one way, which was the outside in, and then suddenly you see it's inside out, and the plot twist happens, and you're living in a whole new world. Now, my life isn't different physically, but my life is different in every way. And yeah, it was from then that I thought, right, I need to share this, and my experience as a therapist before kind of put me in a good position to do that. And I just started to help others with it, because I couldn't see anything else that created the changes that the 3 principles creates. And there are many names for it: inside out, single paradigm, 3 principles, but it's all pointing to the same truth, and the same truth of who we are, and the same truth that thought is a spiritual energy that is coming through us. You know, life is happening through us, not to us. So we start to have an experience where the thoughts that come in are not taken as seriously. Now, when I look back, I was completely and utterly terrified of my own thinking. You know, when I look at my previous relationship to thought, it was completely dysfunctional. It felt that thought, my negative thinking said something about me. So the thoughts and the visions I had when I was in the bad times were a reflection of the person that I was. And that person then needed to be fixed, mended, or put out of its misery, because it was creating such a hell. Now, seeing that thinking was nothing to do with me meant that I didn't need to be fixed or repaired, and I wasn't broken, again, was another thing that truly liberated me from mental illness. So it's quite a profound shift that I had. You know, it was very one state to another state. And I think then over the previous 4 years, life's just got easier. Now, do I still have a bad day? Of course. Can I still occasionally feel a bit low? Yeah. Anxiety, not so much, maybe a tiny bit here and there, but nothing that grasps or grabs hold. So life is different, but it's working with people. And I think when you work with people and they're new to it, it's getting them to believe you that that's possible, because it sounds crazy that I'm just going to talk to you about something called the 3 principles, and you're going to have a completely different experience of being alive. And then I think you take them to a place where they have insights. Now, the learning within the 3 principles is insight-based. So they will have their own insights. And from there, it's not they have to believe you or trust you in what you're saying. They know that for themselves. They then have a knowing. And then the journey as a coach and a client changes, because then it's, rather than a teaching, it's almost an exploration together. So going back to what mental health in a crazy world, well, it looks to me that the world's got crazier in the last 4 years, that's for sure. There seems to be a lot going on out there, and leaders of countries, and, you know, where I live, the homelessness is worse than it's ever been. So we're walking around in a world where our well-being looks dependent on the outside. But what I want to point to in this webinar is that our well-being is always with us. Even though the world does look pretty crazy, I do have to agree. But it's the fact that that world is not coming at us. We're experiencing that world from within us. And the power and the profundity of thought within that experience, because that really is the master of all our experiences. And that points to the truth of oneness. That goes back to the truth of who we are. Because if we're all experiencing this one thing in our own way, we're still all experiencing this one thing. So, yeah, mental health in a crazy world. It's available to everybody. And I truly believe that no matter what state of mental health a person is in, they have the possibility to wake up to this truth and have mental well-being and have a different life. Because it's been my personal experience of it, and that it's also been my experience of my clients that have seen it. So I think Michael Neal says, you know, stay in the conversation. It's whatever way you can, webinars, coaches, whatever way it looks for you. The more you're kind of committed to seeing it, you know, that's all you have to do. Again, it sounds crazy. So I just have to listen. There's no exercises. There's nothing I need to do. You know, no, it literally is a deep listening to wake up the truth within you. And what I have is no different to what any of you have. That truth is within all of us. And that insight-based learning wakes it up. And the interesting thing with insight-based learning, it creates permanent change. This isn't a change that, where sometimes I know that I used to go on courses and it'd be like, yeah, I'm going to change, I'm going to be different. You know, after a couple of weeks, nothing would really change. But there's something with insight-based learning that makes that different. I had a client this morning and she said something about, oh, I'd heard that, I've been told that many times, but I saw it for myself last week and I really get it, and that was it. That's the insight-based learning. It's we see something that creates a shift within us that is permanent. And then what happens within that shift, it tends to create a lot of thought falling away. It creates a lot of thought that just starts to melt or dissolve. So we don't have to do anything about that. That's an organic experience. And then we show up in life and we're different, because thought precedes behaviour. So people come to you and they want their behaviour changed. And I say, well, I can't change your behaviour, but I can get you to understand thought. And in that understanding, the organic thing that will happen is behaviour will change. I can't tell you what that will be, because the implications of this understanding are personal. So for me, they were mental health and well-being. You know, for other people, they're better relationships. I mean, there are probably a lot of different implications for each person, but there's some that really stick out. So for me, as I've explained, it would be my mental health. But there's been other shifts, so how I see, you know, money differently, or, you know, the people in my life differently. It just starts to wake up this understanding of being at peace, of being well, of having innate well-being that is always with us no matter what is going on in the outside world. And that, I think, is what points to mental health. That's what points to our well-being, that we've all got it within. and we've all been pointing away from it for far too long. And I think it's that pointing back that it's you too. You know, that's such freedom. You know, there isn't freedom in this world of form. The freedom is psychological freedom. And I think when we have that, we're well equipped to deal with the world as it is, and we're well equipped to, you know, we realise we have the resilience to deal with the world as it is. We realise that whatever life throws at us, we can pretty much handle it because of who we truly are. So I think that's a good explanation of why I'm here and what I'm doing and what I'd like to explore on the webinar. So Sara, would you like to add anything, or has anyone got any questions at this point, or any direction that they'd like me to go in? You know, it can be anything.
I'll just add, it's sort of a comment and then a question, which has been kind of bubbling around for me on the subject of mental health. But the comment is, so I've just spent the morning with 3 other coaches. We just went for a walk out in the Peak District, which was lovely. And we were just commenting on how the things that really are sort of our natural, our true nature is like stillness and peace, and it's got a sort of resonance of sort of slow and ease. And in our society, that's kind of like the opposite. It's almost like we have to go on a retreat to be ourselves. You know, we kind of like, rather than that being the natural way to live, that we can live from this space of ease and stillness. And you know, it can, for me in my life, I know I used to kind of label it as lazy and things like that. You know, there's some, you have to be kind of like busy, but the busier I noticed I was, the more thoughts I would get, and at the time I'd be believing my thoughts, and this kind of spiraled into symptoms of depression. Everything just seemed so sped up and difficult. And then it was a case of, you know, when I went on these retreats and slowed down, I'd feel well again, but I was attributing it to being on the retreat, as opposed to actually my true nature is this ease and stillness and more of a settled state. And now I can see that, yes, it's when I'm sort of caught up in thought that I start to almost I'm obscuring myself. I'm still there, you know. My true nature is never not there. My wellness, my well-being is never gone, but it sometimes just feels like it is. Not so much now with this deeper understanding. So that was my just comment. One of the questions I've been sort of pondering is, it's taken quite a long time for people with a mental health diagnosis to feel that they're being heard. You know, like, so there was a lot of stigma attached to mental ill health, whether it's being off work with stress or symptoms of depression, whatever it might be. There's like this stigma attached to it. And I can see that this understanding, although it holds the answer, it also could be interpreted that we're saying you haven't got a mental illness, that you're not experiencing, it's all in your head. And I know that's something that people have sort of fought for a long time, to say, no, this is the, you know, if someone had cancer, you wouldn't be denying the fact that they've got cancer. And I suppose for me, what I see in that is the symptoms are real. You know, you really are experiencing what you're experiencing. But when you actually recognize where that experience, where those feelings are coming from, something shifts. And I just wondered what you might say in answer to that, Sam, where someone's feeling that we're kind of almost denying that they've got this diagnosis, that and we're sort of invalidating it in some way. Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Yeah, there are 2 points actually. The first point of what you were saying originally about getting caught up in thought, I want to normalise that. That's the most natural thing in the world. We're here to also get caught up in thought. You know, that's how it looks to me. Again, back to that humanness. It's the dance between the two. We're not supposed to be one or the other. We're dancing between believing thought, it looking real, being fish in water, back to truth and oneness and at peace. And I think the more comfortable we get with that, the easier life becomes, and we don't try and manipulate being in one or the other. We kind of accept that we dance between both. Going back to the second point, I'm just trying to think with clients, because obviously I have people coming to me with those diagnoses. I think it's subtly not diminishing the experience, but showing them where it's coming from. Because it does feel like crap when you've got those feelings. But it feels a lot worse when you've got those feelings and you're believing they're coming from your past or the outside world. When we point them back to the fact they have a diagnosis, but they are not a diagnosis, that's the difference. So I wouldn't diminish the fact that they have a diagnosis and say, yes, you do have a diagnosis, but I don't want you to identify with that as being you. So if I had a depressed person and they said, well, I'm depressed, and they identified that, I would say you have depressed thinking. So you change the narrative. It's just subtle changes in language that can really make a difference. So in that respect, I've not had anyone yet get pissed off at me that I'm denying that they are that. Actually, generally, I tend to see that there's a big relief. You know, when people see that it's thought passing through rather than an identification, labelling them and telling them who they are, then they generally feel a lot better just in that. You know, for me, not being broken, wow, oh, I'm not broken. Actually, the system's working just as well when I'm feeling bad because I am still feeling thought. So the depressed, anxious, mentally ill person is still feeling thought. But obviously, depending what state someone turns up at your door, depends generally what direction you take them in. But I would say as a rule, it's a relief when people realise that they're not labelled with a diagnosis forever, because in the mental illness world, that is who you are. You know, I was told that that was it. I would be anxious and depressed for the rest of my life. You know, if you're schizophrenic, you're that for the rest of your life. So there's something very hopeful just in the beginning stages of a conversation about the 3 principles, that you're pointing somebody back to their wellness, because there is nobody doing that for them. Everybody's pointing to their illness. So is that helpful?
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah, makes sense to me. Yeah, thank you, Sam. That's that was what I wanted to share. So if anyone else has got questions, you can unmute yourself and ask away, or something that they want to share rather than a question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's just a curiosity, Sam, to kind of understand how this kind of relates to your own view of the 3 principles, because it is different for everybody. And now, so I believe like we kind of exist on 2 levels. There's a spiritual level and there's a physical level. And in a sense, you know, if we are totally present, we are perhaps closer to that spiritual level. But I want to give you a situation, and I'm just interested to know whether or not you feel in a position to be able to, well, how you would react, let's put it that way. And so let's just say you were abroad and you were wrongly arrested for something you didn't do, and you're imprisoned. What would be in your head then? How would you deal with that? With this state you're in now, would you be able to maintain it, or would you actually be in a situation where it would shift in a way that isn't helping you?
Well, I don't maintain it at home. You know, it's not something that I'm constantly in a state of oneness and bliss. You know, as I pointed to, that sometimes thought looks real. If thought happens very quickly, we don't know we're in thought. We look like we're in the world again. So I have no idea, because I'm not in that situation. I presume that at some point I would be freaking out and it would be looking very real, and at some point clarity would come in and I would be seeing the truth that I would be experiencing thought. Now, the difference to me would be that when I settled down and saw the truth of my experience, the solution to my problem would come a lot quicker. That's how it looks to me. Now, can solutions come within being a negative mindset? Yes, they can. But it would look to me that probably the more I could sit in the truth, the more I could sit in my well-being, the more I could sit in my wisdom, the quicker I'd probably get out of there. But who knows? See, life is a contact sport. Life is coming at us. I can't tell from 1 minute to the next. I couldn't tell you how I'm going to feel tonight. So a prison abroad, I've got no idea. But for me, I would still be dancing between the two like I am in my life right now. Because I think the problem has been that we've lived in a world where we believe that we should be happy all the time. Happiness is the optimum state, and we'll strive for that. And in our striving for that, we actually seem to be more depressed, more anxious, buying more things, and addicted to self-help. So what this does, it turns that onto its head and normalizes the fact that all emotions are part of the human experience. So instead of feeling sad and looking to my world to try and fix it, I now feel sad and know that it's thought and get on with my life. So there's just shifts in how we respond to the world. So does that mean I'm always in a great position? No, you know, life's life. Sometimes things happen. Have I noticed in the things that have come up that I'm a lot calmer? Yes, I have. Can I guarantee that that will always happen? No, I can't. Can I guarantee that for my clients that that will always happen? No. But there's something in understanding how this works that allows us at some point to see it. You know, because I didn't know about it before. I couldn't see it. Now I know about it. My bandwidth it's easier for me to see. The more I look in this direction, the deeper I see it, the more bandwidth I have for it to be available to me when I'm not seeing it. But it still looks to me like that's nothing to do with me. I see it when I see it. I can't manipulate that.
Okay, just to give my own perspective on this, you know, this idea of us all is wanting to be happy. It's don't use that word so much. I actually can move forward better if I use the word acceptance. So basically, that's the state I aspire to be in most of the time, because for me it involves no resistance. It's like life is a flow, and the less barriers you have, the easier it flows. So in a sense, I think I am contented, shall we say, when I'm acceptant, and that is the state in which I tend to focus on getting to, because obviously when we have shit happens scenarios, it is the response that will determine how you are mentally, physically able to move on.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that that's a great point. And also, Byron Katie says that there's two ways to live, and one is at war with reality. So, you know, that's what you're pointing to there. But you know, the only thing that's ever clouding us from living in the now and being acceptance, to me, would be thought. So again, it would point back to this fundamental truth that we're experiencing thought. And depending how clouded we were within that, would be how accepting we were of what was going on for us. So for me, all roads do lead back to thought, the upstream of we are mind, consciousness and thought. We are, and even they can interchange. There's a oneness there. And it's only when we identify with, when I identify with the construct of being a Sam and what a Sam wants, that I get into trouble. That's where I can stumble, because it becomes, I make it too personal. So for me, what you're pointing to is living in that flow is actually knowing that I'm supported by these principles and life is going in the direction and is exactly as it should be, rather than the Sam trying to manipulate and construct it. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes, that's lovely. The only thing I would say is that in terms of the three principles, I love the message, but I kind of ignore the definitions, because ultimately they're just words.
Yeah.
And I think I've moved to a place where I just, feeling is more, it means it connects with what I'm going through a lot better than these distinctions between. But the idea of oneness is I'm fully into that. And I think we all it's almost overthinking to sort of try and pin down what the three principles are. It's actually a very natural thing which we can be enlightened to, but sometimes I almost think we don't even need a book on it. It's like it's something that just resonates without you needing to get into theory or any of that stuff. So yeah, for me it's a feeling, and I don't really go too deep into the mind, consciousness, all that stuff. I mean, thoughts are thoughts. I mean, we cannot live without thinking. It is, if you are conscious, your mind will work. It's what your mind is doing. So you can have pure thoughts. It's like how you're experiencing what's out there is a thought, and it's just what those thoughts are doing to you. So the idea of not having thoughts or ignoring it is not a discussion I get into, because it just doesn't quite add up. But everyone takes this in their own way and does what they like with it, and as long as it's for the best for themselves, then it works.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think, I've got clients that don't like talking about it as the three principles, and clients that just want to explore it as principles. So I think for everybody, they have their own way. And again, it's never prescriptive. It's all pointing to the same direction. We're all pointing to the oneness, the truth of who we are. And going back to ignoring thought, I wouldn't even say it's ignoring thought. It's just an understanding of what thought is. I would never prescribe you ignore your thinking. I would prescribe you understand what thought is. And I love that instead of, to me, it used to be that freedom would be the thinker without thought, but actually it's thought without a thinker. It's me not getting involved in that. There's just subtle shifts that when you start seeing it more deeply and you work with people, that they'll find their own version of how this works for them. And I think a good or a great coach does that. It's never prescribing, it's describing. It's saying, this is the system. And with some people, we go to the oneness, and with other people, we go to consciousness. And you just go on this beautiful journey, and it is an awakening. And so when you you just hit different levels of that all the time, and you just see it a bit more deeply. And, the nature of how inside out life really is. I mean, it really is coming from us. The whole experience is coming from within. And I saw that 2 weeks ago even more deeply. And I don't really know what I saw, because the insights don't always have to have words. Insights can be the feeling that you're talking about. So I didn't even try to put words to it. I just knew that there was something that was seen much more deeply in the inside-out nature of life. And again, that's another little awakening, another truth, another way of seeing the world. And it's a gift. It really is a gift and a blessing. I don't care how anyone sees it, what they want to call it. That's it. As long as we're all pointing in the same direction, and people are getting relief from the thinking that looks real to them that is not, then that for me is it. When you see someone's face light up because they're having an insight, that's the most beautiful thing. And there's 1,000 ways. There's probably more than 1,000 ways to get there. All the great sages have pointed in exactly the same direction. And you just hold people's hands and hope you do the best for them to point them in that direction too.
Lovely, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else with a question or something they'd like to share? Just unmute yourself and ask away or share away.
Nice quiet group. Any reflections? Anything? Have you got anything, Sara, that you'd like to share or ask or point to?
I am feeling, maybe this is why I mentioned the stillness thing, I am feeling very still at the moment. I'm interested, I know recently you had a day at your house where you actually spent a day looking at mental health, our innate mental health. I'm interested to know just a little bit about, I suppose, sort of like the journey you take somebody on when you sort of, if you're looking at, I think you focused on anxiety, didn't you, on that day? So I'm just wondering if there's sort of people listening to this, or if they either they are dealing with anxiety themselves, or they know somebody that is. Where's the sort of starting place?
The starting place of the conversation that's how it looks to me. See, it's so different. The more I show up with somebody and speak to them from the deeper space, it seems to be the more profound and effective the conversation is. So I don't show up with what I'm going to say. There's no script. There's nothing that's set out that if someone has anxiety, I say A, B, and C. It's that I sit with them, I hopefully connect, and from there a conversation evolves. So it becomes very natural. It becomes very much a listening and finding out how they see the world, and then showing them maybe a different way, just something that can subtly shift their experience of the feeling. Because we don't know what feelings are. I didn't know what a feeling was. I thought a feeling was an emotion, and my emotions came from the outside. So the fact that this is so different, the starting point is always showing them probably that system, the thought, feeling, connection, the inside out. So we start there. Now where that goes is so different with every person that I speak to. And the more Sam gets out of the way, and the more I connect to the deeper part of me, and the more mind comes through, the more profoundly life-changing the conversation is. Now, it is life-changing as well. I mean, from somebody wanting to kill themselves in 2 sessions to being happy, I've seen that. I've not seen that in any other field that I've worked in. Now, I think as a practitioner or as a coach, you have to be very careful, and obviously you have to be very aware that if someone is in a very deep state, that they may need additional support. I would never take anybody off medication if they're on it. I would point them towards the fact that when it felt right for them, that would be the right time for them to come off it. Again, I would never prescribe or remove anything from them that they felt that they needed in that moment. It's an incredibly supportive, gentle process. So, yeah, it's so different. It depends who's sitting in front of me. And in a group, that group went really deep really quickly. You know, we spent the day looking towards mental health, and we ended up sitting in the truth of oneness. And I do think no matter what direction you take the conversation, you know, you can start the conversation with anxiety or depression or, you know, addiction, you know, or, you know, just happiness, whatever it is that people want to point to, it is generally the same conversation. That I find really interesting. Conversation is always directed back to the truth. Because the more we zoom out from our perceived problems and mental illnesses and thoughts, you know, life looks really different. You know, Jack Pransky would talk about it as the elevation of consciousness. We can talk about it as zooming out. You know, there's many, many ways to describe it, but the perspective changes. You know, the plot twist happens. And I generally see that from there, people like to stay in the conversation in some form because we know the value of it. You know, I remember reading Michael Neill's book when I had the 3 days of bliss 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. And I remember having the book in my hands, and I remember knowing that this was so important to point people that were experiencing what I'd experienced to. You know, it was the answer in a form to mental illness, because I'd heard it many times from other people, but then I had my own shift and my own experience of it. And I had the book in my hand, and I remember thinking, I'd rather arm my son with this understanding in life than leave him £1 million. You know, it really is, when you see it, it impacts you. And it's priceless. There isn't a value on it. There's nothing you could say to me, I'll give you that, but I'll take away what you can see. And there isn't anything, because I know what it's given me has equipped me to deal with life exactly as it is, no matter what.
That's beautiful. And for me, I feel exactly the same. And I had this deeper insight, which was only in April this year. So what's that, 6-7 months ago? Straight away, I was, you know, I need to share this. Well, it's not even need. It's just like it's like compelled almost to share it, because it's so life-changing. And so when you understand, well, for me, as soon as I could see how the human experience worked, like I said, I fell in love with my humanness, whereas before I was trying to get away from it. I was doing, you know, I spent years trying to heal myself in order to be, I don't know, more spiritual or more, you know, more, not even sure now what it was I was trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Because now all of that has fell away, and I just get to play and have fun with life and not take myself too seriously, and have these gorgeous conversations with people. It's amazing. And I certainly don't have, like anxiety and things like that. I recognise that was still going on in my life, but now I just don't notice it. If it's there, then it's not something that I'm giving a lot of attention to. It's like the other week I did my first public webinar. So this is only the second public webinar that I've sort of facilitated on, and my hands were shaking the first time, and and it didn't matter. Whereas I know prior to this deeper understanding, any kind of feelings where I've got sensations like that would be, I would immediately think that's telling me not to do something. It's telling me that something's wrong. It's telling, I'd create all these stories of how I felt meant, what it means. And now that I know that it's what I'm feeling for in the moment, I can just feel, let it be, and not have to, and carry on, like you say, you can carry on with whatever it is you're wanting to engage in without the stories. And I think that's what certainly helps stay connected with my being aware of my well-being, is that I'm always okay, and I can have different feelings and sensations. I can experience emotions of anger, sadness, and that's just part of being human. It's all fine.
Yeah, and I think another great thing is that, me too, I experience all of those things. But what I don't do now is add to them after I've experienced them. So I would feel something, and then I'll not only try and work out why I'd felt it and fix it, I'd also add guilt to the fact that I've maybe got angry or felt a certain way. Now, feelings just come through and pass. Sometimes I react to them, sometimes I don't. But I think a really valuable thing that I learned was that as soon as I add anything onto its thought, I'm back in the game. So I have to point to its thought full stop. Because if it's thought and or if but, I'm backing outside in. It's thought creating feeling in the moment, and that is the only thing that I'm experiencing. Now that levels everything. That allows me to have an experience of life, even if it's uncomfortable, and gracefully go through it. Or as gracefully as I can. As I said, we still have these experiences and these moments. But the direction, the simplicity of pointing someone back in the direction of their well-being, even that is game-changing for people. Because we don't live in a world that points to that. We live in a world that points to there's something wrong with us that needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed by drugs, alcohol, shopping, money, men, women. We can see how many illusions there are available to us to try and fix this imaginary life that we're living. And when we step back into the truth, none of that is going to make any difference. Now, can we go out and play and buy and do? Yeah, of course. But there's a completely different relationship to doing those things. It's no longer for an outcome. It's for an experience. Everything for me was outcome-based previously. There was so much of me on my mind, of fixing me and helping me and getting out of this mental illness and me. And a lot of that falls away. You do have less of yourself on your mind. Your presence is very attractive to other people. There's something, everybody's out there trying to fix themselves, and they come to you and you show them the truth, and you sit in that truth yourself. Now, the people that I know in this world are some of the most genuine, show up as themselves people that I know, because we're not trying to cover up or add. Kind of, we you know, the experience of looking towards the principles is subtractive. We start taking away, we start removing. Remove the layers of the constructs of the personality, of the who we are and what we need, and we just tend to be a lot more present with people. Now, people aren't always used to that. You know, I know a lot of people I speak to, and I can speak to them for an hour, and I know everything about them, but they don't know anything about me. So a lot of people are in that world where it's that generation of the perpetual generation of something to be okay. And again, that is something that falls away. Are we perfect when it falls away? By no means. You know, again, I don't want to point to anything that's not true. We're having a human experience. But does it mean that we're not so caught out by all of those things? Yes. Do we notice that what we're doing is a construct? Yes. You know, that everyone on this call has constructed a personality. But that's okay. Again, like you, Sara, I used to think that was something I needed to get away from. My goal was enlightenment. You know, I lived in India and meditation communes and all sorts of crazy stuff that I did for this attainment of enlightenment. And actually what I saw again during the 3 days of bliss was, oh, I was already there. It definitely wasn't in India. You know, it definitely wasn't in the outside world. It was something that was within me and has always been and always will be. And it's just the beauty of awakening to that. That we already are. Not that we see it or feel it or experience it all of the time, but it's there. There's some deep truth that I think is what we were all searching for, but we didn't quite know what it was. And I know people have different experiences of they like the principles, don't like the principles, you know, whatever it is. But for me, they were so grounding, and they gave me such a building block for all the things that I'd studied before, all the spiritual understandings, all the things that I'd learned in India, and I had a guru called Osho, and I used to do, you know, everything that he taught. But there was something, I saw it also differently once I understood the principles. And I speak to people and I say, it's like I was doing all that stuff, and it was like trying to write a novel without knowing my alphabet. And what the principles has given me, it's given me the ABC. I know the alphabet now, and all that stuff just resonates so much more deeply. So yeah, it's a very, I find them very graceful. Very graceful, and I'm incredibly grateful that I did stumble across them, because it really profoundly changed my life. And in that, I'm also helping other people. And I'm just a conduit for it. I'm just another channel that's going out there and helping people. But it's a real blessing to be that channel. And I know some other people on here as well are doing the same thing. And, you know, it's sometimes I have to stop and recognise how lucky I am that I'm one of the people that has got to see this in this lifetime and have this experience of life. Yeah.
And how can people contact you, Sam? So people on the call or people listening to this, the recording?
Right, well, I've got a private Facebook page which everybody is welcome to join, where I just share little snippets called We Are the Principles. I have a website, artistcoach.org, so you can contact me through that. Or email is samanthahurst@inbox.com. So anyway, anyone wants to reach out and even just have a chat, that's absolutely fine. I'm always doing things and events and have offers, and You know, it's whatever way I can help, or even point you in the direction towards somebody else. It's never, you know, and again, I love that about the principles world. It's never, you've got to see that person. It's always finding the right person for the right person. So if any of this has been helpful to you, then great. Or for anyone you know, then point them towards me or Sara. That's absolutely fine. January and August, I always have Pay What You Can. So that's always available. So people that can't afford the high fees then can have some sessions during January or August where they can just show up and pay what they can afford. So it then makes it inclusive, because I think actually it can be quite an expensive world. You know, the coaches, I'm relatively cheap, but I know that, you know, it can cost a lot of money. So I think a lot of us do try and do what we can to help people that maybe don't have as much, because it really should be for everybody.
Yeah, and thankfully there is a lot of free resources. There's lots of the 3 Principles global community. The webinars, which are monthly, are really amazing. So there's in that Michael Neal phrase of stay in the conversation. Yeah. There's always a way of staying in the conversation, whether it's one-to-one with a coach, or whether it's in some of these more affordable group programs, or joining these live webinars. I know, there's quite a few coaches like myself that do webinars as well. So there's, And
also, my friend Rudy has 3principlesmovies.com. There's some great stuff on there and some great content. And he always has events. So he's got an events page. So if there is anything local to you, you'd find it on his page. And 3PGC is the American 3 Principles Practitioners website. And on there's a lot of free content. So there really is stuff out there. So, you know, if you're interested, I would say, you know, go for it. You know, get what you can from these websites and from coaches that have got offers or whatever's available to you. But thank you, Sara, and thank you everyone for showing up. It's really enjoyed it.
Kevin's just asked, what is the US site again? Can we just say what that is?
3pgc.com or .org, I think. You'll find it. 3 Principles Global Community.
.org it is.
Oh, is it .org? Thank you, Birdie.
Yeah, can I say also that Michael has got his Living from Inside Out at the moment for $10 on udemy.com.
Brilliant. Yes, I put that on the Principles page. I forgot about that. Thank you, Birdie.
So that might help if you're a little bit short of the cash.
Yeah, there's always stuff out there, and always reach out, you know, to a coach and say what free resources are out there at the moment, because everyone's super helpful and they really will point you in the direction that you need to go.
Yeah, I suppose the other piece I'd like to add to that is that it's not that there's something to get, though. You know, when we're saying stay in the conversation, it is a case of listening and just being open, rather than a sense of grasping of, I've got to try and work this out. You know, the insights are infinite, and they come to you. Okay, you can't say exactly when an insight's going to occur, but they're happening all the time. You know, subtle ones, or some of these, you know, really you know, sudden life-changing ones. But you know, we're always receiving insights, but you don't have to be searching, looking. You can just relax and just absorb the information, and and that's something that's really lovely about insights.
I'd just like to add to that it's like whatever you're doing, it's planting the seeds for the insight. So when you read a book, when you go on a webinar, you're just seed planting. But the insights happen, as you said, anywhere. I say they're like Campari. Do you remember the old Campari adverts? Anytime, any place, anywhere. And that, I mean, I've had one in King's Cross Station in like rush hour, and it was like, oh, that was unexpected. So, you know, don't add conditions to insight. They are just what they are, and they will come to you. And really, other than listening, there's nothing you can do to manipulate them. I had a client this morning that's had a notebook at every session so far, and I've said, don't have your notebook, or, you know, less notebook. but couldn't give up the notebook, but then had an insight and has given up the notebook. So, it just is what it is. We do the best we can. And, they really are nothing to do with us. They're coming from deep within. With insights, it's, again, back to inside out. We can't manipulate them.
Yeah.
But they are available.
They are available. They're infinite. Thank you so much, Sam. It was absolutely wonderful. You really shared so much of your story, and lots about the inside out nature of life and how it all works. I think it's very, very clear, very concise. You've got a wonderful way of explaining, explaining the unexplainable. So well done.
Oh, thank you so much. And again, thank you for everyone for showing up. I mean, it's really lovely to see all these faces and names, and it's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
I'm just going to unmute everybody so we can all just say thank you and goodbye. So
thank you, Sara.
Thank you. Thanks, Sam.
Bye.
Bye.
Sara.
Thank you very much.